The art of receiving and what it is and what it isn't. Let's get into it.
Hey,
Hi,
Rivky.
Chani.
So excited to be here with you. Wow. Okay, so definitely I have a lot of experience about what it isn't because it took me a long time in my life and it's still a work in progress to allow myself to be vulnerable enough to receive. And one story that is definitely a lesser proud moment of my receiving abilities was it was we were pretty young in our marriage. We had just moved back from Israel, so Avi was our baby at the time. So we're going back a good 18 years ago. And Tali bought me a gift. And he really put in so much effort to find just the right gift for me. And what it was a KitchenAid. And what his intention was to buy something that's beautiful for me, buy something that's practical, and make my life easier. And not only did he just get me a KitchenAid, trending at that time was cool metal tones. So he specifically chose the rose gold tone. And also trending at the time was the bowl of the KitchenAid was not metal, it was glass. So when it sits on your counter, it's really something to look at and it's so pretty. And I just did the most terrible job of receiving it. I just couldn't, basically threw it back in his face to the point that there was this walk of shame of him taking it to the UPS truck and me feeling like, yeah, you know what? Yeah. So much defense and validity in my decision not to receive. But really, underneath all of that was this childhood wound of feeling misunderstood.
Mm.
And what I attached it to, and I took it so personally. I took it so personally, this
Why
gift,
did you feel misunderstood?
because the way that I defended myself in that moment or in my mind was like, if you really knew me, you would know that I love to make challah by hand. And I love,
Challah is, I'm just pausing you. Challah is bread that Jewish women make before Shabbat.
yes, thank you for
Yes.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
So I love the art of making this bread by hand, being involved in it and really kneading the dough, being in this sensory experience with my bread. And in the way that I understood this gift to be, which was so intentional that almost the intentionality made me feel even more misunderstood because I was like, you put so much intention into something that I don't even want because if you really knew what I want, you would know that I just like to bake the bread with my hands. What the hell?
Mhm.
That was what that was, and I couldn't even see past that point. I couldn't consider that like, maybe the KitchenAid could be for other things. Maybe there's other ways in this, but I was definitely not at a point in my life to see that and understand that, and I took it really personally. And ultimately, obviously, he took it pretty personally too, because
Yeah.
all of his efforts were just crashed on the floor and shattered into a million pieces. And it definitely took us time to recover from that to then feel confident enough to buy me a different gift at a different time. Because
Yeah.
once you shatter that space, it takes a little time to recover and repair. So yeah, that's definitely what receiving isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that story. Your vulnerability is so helpful for our audience
Yeah.
to feel resonance, especially women listening to this, but probably anybody listening to this, to feel resonance in difficulty in receiving. And when I hear that story, I think about the idea that on top of the table, you threw a gift back in your husband's face. And under the table, what was happening inside? What was the child inside of you saying? If you knew me, if you understood me, you would know that blah, blah, blah. And I think that when we're talking about receiving, it's really important to understand that there are so many defenses under the table to receiving that come from such simple and elegant and beautiful defenses that are created because of maybe perhaps not fully being feeling understood or seen or known or recognized in the ways that we desire. So we act in these childhood defensive ways unconsciously until we make them conscious, a year or two or 20 later, and we get to learn and understand new ways of receiving and being with receiving. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
After that, I really recognized also because it wasn't just me and Tully in that situation. My family was around. They were all excited for this gift that Tully bought for me. So just to make things worse and to paint the behavior that I'm least proud of in that moment is it wasn't even that it was a quiet, private moment. It was witnessed by others. But afterwards, I did receive some reflections from family that helped me notice myself in that,
Mm,
to help me notice what was that? What
yeah.
was that big reaction that you had to something that was being offered to you with so much generosity and love and consideration and cherishing and adornment. Like all of these
Yeah.
beautiful things were being offered to me. And I, in my inability to be vulnerable, I couldn't receive it. And so
Yeah.
then I read this book called Things Will Get as Good as You Can Stand. We'll tag that so that people could find the source for that book and be able to read it for themselves if this is something that resonates, because I really felt like this book was revolutionary for me. But what I came to learn is that receiving has so much less to do with you and so much more to do with the person's bid and their desire for connection with you.
Mm,
It
mm,
has so much more to do with the giver than with the way that I understood it, which was as a receiver, I took it personally because I made it about myself. When really, it's not really about that. It's more about this beautiful gesture that's being offered, and receiving that is opening the door for connection and intimacy and possibility in this space.
yeah. Yeah. It's reminding me of a mother that I know who didn't allow her kids in the kitchen to help with cooking, and she has this neighbor who always allowed her kids in the kitchen even when they were younger and it was messier, and they were like, "Mommy, I want to help." And she said, "Okay, here's you can peel some potatoes," or "Okay, here you can, mix the batter." And now that person's daughters cook dinner or can take over the cooking, and they can actually help in ways that are supportive, whereas the one who was not able to receive that has such difficulty in, like, nobody really helps her now,
Yeah.
and she has to do the things herself because her ability to receive was also compromised by another defense, which is on top of the table. It's, I do it better and quicker and it's easier myself. So if
Yes.
you're listening to this and those words landed deep in your body,
Oh,
just know
yes.
that that's a really, really common experience. And under the table, what is it? It's, I don't believe anyone could fully hold my needs. I don't fully believe that I think that my needs might be too big for somebody else to be able to hold. And there's also this experience in that, which is a bit of a inner perfectionist, which is, I need it my way or the highway, or I need it perfectly, or it will be really difficult for me to be with the feeling of, you know, my child setting the table not so beautifully as opposed to me setting it in exactly the way that I want to. Or so there's so much of that, which then pushes away, like you're talking about that bid for connection, pushes away the bid for connection, and actually comes at the end of it to, in a way, hurt us because we're the only ones who lose out at the end of the day. And this isn't fixing that and this isn't saving that, but this is just an acknowledgement and a validation that if you're listening to this and that can help you feel seen or understood, then there's that. Yeah.
And we see you. And everything
We
that
see
you just
you.
said landed deeply inside of me. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Me
that. All of
too.
that. Yeah. I resonate. And it's also making me think of this hilarious guy on Instagram, which I don't know his name right now, but he's an Israeli guy that imitates his mom. So he wears this gray bathrobe with his towel up in his hair. And you see him on the clip, he's vacuuming, and then he plays both roles. So he's also the son, and the son is sitting on his phone on the couch. He's like, Ima, you need help? And she's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No, sit. Don't worry. Don't worry. And so she's vacuuming aggressively all around him. And then you see it moves to another clip, and they're in the kitchen, and her mother and the mother's washing the dishes, and the son comes in, and He's like, Ima, you want help? I could do the dishes. You could do something else. Go relax. Go relax. Have a tea. I'll do it. She's like, no, no, mapito, mapito. Don't worry. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And then it goes to another clip where she's like on the phone with her friend and she's like, I have to do everything in this house. I have to cook. I have to clean. I have to do this. She's all dramatic about this martyrdom where I need to do everything. But ultimately, it's the support is being offered. She's just not open to receiving it. And he does it in
Yeah.
this hilarious way where I resonate also. I see myself in that Israeli woman too. And I'm sure in many cultures we can relate to that because there is something about the female role and this martyr syndrome that trails us. But I just loved it because it was just a hilarious way to call us out.
Yeah. Parodies are it's so funny, and parodies are so amazing to be able to see ourselves clearly, because humor is a way to see ourselves with less defense. And I think in our friendship we do that a lot. Being able to see ourselves or each other with humor allows things to soften to the point where we can actually look at things that could be maybe more challenging to look at. But a third way that difficulty receiving could be manifested through that story is in martyrdom or passive aggressiveness. My favorite joke is whenever I see that passive aggressive someone, I'm like, hello, passive, meet aggressive in my head. But
I love it.
there's this feeling inside of different cultures, especially cultures of people who have big family. But in general, there is this passiveness where it's like, it's okay, it's fine, I'm okay, we're okay. But underneath the table, there's this current of anxiety, or there's current of anger, or this current of aggressiveness that's not quite expressed, but definitely felt in the room. And when that happens, the effect of that parent on their child is that the child doesn't start to believe, oh, my parent is overwhelmed, or doesn't know how to receive, or doesn't fully know how to communicate or connect, or is missing some of their childhood needs. The child starts to believe there must be something wrong with me, because children sense energy. Children
Oh,
sense
yeah.
energy. And the child starts to believe there must be something wrong with me, that there's this, my mom or dad is smiling at me, but there's this current of anxiety or pressure or aggressiveness or even anger underneath that's suppressed. And why does that happen? Because we don't only learn not to receive, we learn not to receive from people who had difficulty receiving. So it doesn't
Absolutely.
just come from nowhere. And there can be two kinds of parents that a child could have. One is that their parent took up so much space. Maybe because of their trauma, they were very, traumatized. And it was almost like they had to become the parent and their parent was the child in some ways. The second way is that the parent took up so little space, but not truthfully, because really everybody needs to take up space. Everybody has needs. And in some people, there was the cocktail, the daily special, where the parent was both. Or maybe
Oh
they
my
had,
gosh.
or maybe they had one parent that was one way and one parent that was another way. So our models to receiving are our parents and caregivers. And martyrdom and false humility and passive aggressiveness is felt in the resonance field. It's felt energetically, and there's no shaming. We're not here to shame those patterns. Those are also elegant defense mechanisms created from unmet needs. But we do what we do, and we know what we know. And when we do better, when we know better, we can do better. And I have some clients who are older, you know, 60s, 70s, even 80s,
Wow.
and they have the capacity and possibility to heal and take up more space in their own life. And learning to receive, it's not mutually exclusive to learning to receive life. So when I'm in a state of receiving, what does that actually mean? That I am able to be present, that I'm able to receive all of the good and the love and the abundance that is available for me in this world, that I'm able to be creative, that I'm able to receive my own creativity, that I'm able to receive my own rest, that I'm able to receive feedback or communication from others. I'm able
Mm.
to receive love without a voice in my head saying, if only they knew who I really am, then they wouldn't give me this compliment or feedback, to receive compliments.
Mm,
So there's so much receiving that's tied to our vitality and our aliveness. How much health can I receive? What's the title of
mhm.
the book again?
Things will get as good as you can stand.
Exactly. So
Exactly.
there's this, how much receiving can I stand? And usually it's as much or less than we were modeled.
Yes.
So we are the possibility in the universe, and we are the ancestors of our children.
Yeah.
And we are the new paradigm. We're creating the new possibilities to what can it look like to receive life. And when, in order to feel, like we said in the last episode, in order to feel all the flavors of life, we need to feel all the flavors of life. So, which means that if I'm receiving life, I'm also receiving my feelings, my
Yeah.
sadness, my grief, my anger, my despair, my disappointment, my joy, my aliveness, my pleasure, my children, my blessings, my body, etc.
Yeah, I see how that so deeply goes hand in hand. How receiving is such a beautiful way to gauge where we're holding in life
Yeah.
in so
Yeah.
many ways, because that ultimately, when we are able to receive, we get to notice everything. It
Yeah.
opens up this window of noticing. It just made me think, actually, my track record is not so great, but I'm moving into becoming a much better receiver over these years and over learning so deeply, and understanding how to create space for that. But I'm just thinking, like, my husband bought me a gift for Hanukkah and I loved it and I received it and I'm actually wearing it right now. And I was just thinking,
Beautiful.
oh, what an opportunity it would be to do it together with family so that we could offer that sort of modeling where
Mm.
one can, because he gave it to me in the privacy of our own room. And so I received it and I was so excited. But there was a part of me that, now I'm thinking about it, it really would be beautiful if we made it more into a way to model this behavior, to
Like
show
to your children, you're
to
saying?
my children, yeah, that if we're gonna gift each other and we've gotten to a space to receive, and I'm not saying me, because Telly knows how to receive. It was me. I'm the one who
Yeah.
was challenged in that space. Now that I'm aware of that, it's like, oh wow, because I can say anything I want to until I'm blue in the face. But what children receive is the modeling, is the embodiment of the practice. And so just
Yeah.
recognizing that that's an opportunity every time to receive. He gives me a compliment, I think, every single night after we have
Yeah.
dinner. He says, "Thank you so much for dinner. It was delicious." I've become so accustomed to receiving that I'm like, that's my,
Right.
that's the way I
Right.
receive that. But what a consciousness to bring in, to notice that when I receive, every time I do, it's the opportunity, it's the possibility that I'm creating for this frequency to exist, to
So
create the
beautiful.
momentum in my life that revolves around ease in receiving, and modeling that for my children to know that they could receive it too, that it's
Yeah.
safe and it's beautiful and it brings that gorgeous connection.
And what a gift to your husband, because when you're receiving, then what are you doing for Tully? He's being received. So
Yes.
there's this real moment in time where you're picking up what he's putting down, which is his love and his bid for connection and his real compliment, his
Yeah.
real reflection. And you made me think of something that someone told me when you said about giving the gift in front of your kid, which is, I think, such a revolutionary idea. This idea of receiving is so much more than gifts, also just
Absolutely.
wanting to presence that, but gifts are a tangible way to receive in this world, and probably the most tangible way to also be rejected in some way, like
Right.
gifts, words of affirmation, really everything though, gifts, words of affirmation, physical touch, support. These are all things that we could receive or reject. The possibility of receiving from God or receiving from the universe,
Mm,
receiving from Hashem. Sometimes I meet people who say, I'm so successful or I have so much abundance, but I'm afraid to make other people feel bad, or it's not
mm,
humility or things like that. And I always think to myself, if you receive Hashem's abundance, not in a way of too indulged, in some way, but if you receive the abundance of the universe and you live it out loud, If you receive healing and now you feel a lot of inner peace and joy, if you receive a beautiful gift of meeting your soulmate or having a beautiful child, what is it like to live that out loud? And you run an event business, and there's a way to look at parties that people make, weddings that people make, and be like, wow, this is so ostentatious, wow, this is so much. And then there's another way to look at it, which is like, wow, you are receiving the abundance that God gave you and celebrating it in a way that everyone can see
Yes.
in the way that everyone can see you receiving your life and receiving the light in this world and receiving Hashem for because a healer that I have once recently told me, he said, God desires for us all to have it all.
Yes. Yeah.
God desires for us all to have it all. And when we receive it with grace, then we continue to receive. And that's, I think, in Kabbalah and in subconscious healing and in all of the ways, we learn this over and over and over again. When we receive with grace,
Yeah.
it makes the universe desire to turn toward us. And
Yeah.
when we receive with gratitude, when we receive like it was meant for us, when we receive with stepping into that space with, this was created for me because the universe desires me to have it all, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Not more than everyone else, not better than everyone else, just like everyone else. So, yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Filled me up so much to just listen to all of that. And I was thinking about receiving with grace, and it makes me think of a story about my grandmother and my grandparents, actually. So, my grandfather would buy my grandmother jewelry pretty often, like after she had a baby or before a holiday. And this one time he came home with this piece of jewelry, and it wasn't necessarily my grandmother's taste, but she received it and she said, "Thank you so much." And she, took the gift. But then the holiday came and she chose not to wear it because she didn't really love it. And
Mm,
so my grandfather inquired. He was like, "Wait, what happened? You're not wearing the necklace." So she's like, "Listen, thank you so much. I so appreciate that you went out of your way. And I can tell you spent a lot of money and it's a really special piece, but it's just not my taste." And he's like, "I
mm,
knew it. I knew it. The lady at the store told me that this is what's trending and this is what I should take here." But I was like, "It's not my wife's style." And she's like, "No, I'm telling you, she's going to love it. She's going to love it. Let's go back and we'll choose something else."
oh,
And something about the honesty in that space where she, first of all, offered so much grace to the receiving. Even if she didn't like it, she received it. She received the gesture, which is the
mm,
most important part. I think that we get fixated with the thing, the item itself, or the way the person said it, or the word that they used that triggered me, or whatever it is, that we lose sight of the gesture, the beautiful intention that was coming behind the gift. And in that receiving, they were able to have this softer conversation and create even more connection and even more intimacy together, and now go pick out something that was more suitable for what she liked. And so receiving doesn't mean that I just take everything exactly how it is. It doesn't mean that. If I don't like
yeah,
it, I could be honest about the thing that's not not the thing that I want, but there is grace and there is
yeah,
an understanding that the intention and the gesture is so much more important than whatever the word or the thing or whatever that is. And I feel like that's also on top of the table and under the table. Same concept where it's, I get caught up in the word, I get caught up in the thing, I get caught up in the idea. But underneath that, I'm losing the depth of what this is, which is this beautiful bid to be more deeply connected, to live
yes.
a life that's so much more held. And I don't know, I feel like it's just delicious if we allow it to ourselves.
Yeah. First of all, celebrating for you that this is in your DNA. For all the challenges in it, this also exists. in your generational pattern, and this
Yeah.
story lives. And also contrasting that to the story about the KitchenAid, it's why was she able to receive without defense and also return it with grace? Because she didn't feel the defense comes from a childhood or whatever, some kind of wound, which for you it was a feeling of misunderstood or am I known, which it seems like in this case with your grandmother, she didn't necessarily feel that way in this story. So that's also a
Right. I
real
actually thought about the two
yeah.
stories and the different upbringings that we had,
Mm,
and how in her upbringing she was really understood. There was that aspect for her. And in my upbringing, it wasn't necessarily there. And so it's so interesting how you could be my grandmother, but my experience with your child is actually different. It's
fascinating.
fascinating. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Not all things trail,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the way it is. And
Yeah.
yeah,
They
it's
trail in
cool.
some ways and not other ways because
Right. It's
there's
just,
two parents, there's
yeah.
nature, there's God, there's soul's journeys, all the things.
Right, but I think that sometimes we consider intergenerational stuff as take it for granted, and that's not necessarily
Not
true.
always.
Just
Yeah.
because they had the capacity for that doesn't mean that you will.
Yeah.
And also being held accountable to that standard just because someone else did, sometimes it leads to even more misunderstood ultimately. Because
I
then,
also think, yeah, I also think that women, this is not backed by science. It's just my
okay,
own personal intuitive sense, as well as seeing many, many clients. Women learn about receiving from their mothers so much. And that's something that very often does trail back in time,
yeah,
all the way back. So both end,
both end, absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Ah, such good stuff, man.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I'm thinking about something else that's coming up, which is so if you know me, then you know that I receive a tremendous amount of feedback all the time. I love to share testimonials and feedback from the work that I do because I feel like words that come from the heart enter the heart. And sometimes my clients say it much better than I ever can, and it's available, and it comes to me sometimes 10 times a day, sometimes even way more than that.
Wow.
Really, I'm talking about big numbers. And my friend, who is an incredible practitioner, once called me and she asked me a really honest question. She said, "Why do you receive so much feedback and I don't?" She's like, "I know I'm a good practitioner. I don't think," and I was like, "Yes, you are." She said, "Why do you receive so much? Why does it come at this level?" I once worked with this business mentor and she said, and she works with corporations that have many, many, many people in it. She's like, "I've never seen such, this is other level." And it is other level.
You're saying the
And
feedback.
yeah, even, she's like, "I work with businesses who have like 100 employees and they don't have that. This isn't, I don't see this.
Yeah.
I'm just impressing on our audience how
Yes.
vast it is. And sometimes it's even overwhelming for me. It's so much and it's so beautiful. But what I learned was, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, I realized that I was living through the lens of maybe other people's, in some ways, other people's views about me, other people's views about the world. And I wanted to start receiving positive feedback in a way that I take it at face value. I just really just receive it for what it is. And
Mm.
so what I started to do is I started to screenshot every single message that I received that was positive. It could be someone sent me a heart. It could be somebody said, "Thank you so much. You're the best." It could be super generic to super, "Thank you so much. You changed my life." Like it could be super generic to super personal. And every letter that I received as well. And I started to screenshot them. And as I focused on it, I also
Mm.
started to take a minute, instead of just screenshotting it, take a minute and let it enter my body. So I would take a minute and sit with the feeling and almost swallow and take it in and really let it penetrate my inner being and really let it be with me. And at the beginning, it was actually really challenging because I didn't know, I'm very used to sending the things out. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't
Yes.
fully have the mechanism to take it in.
Mm.
So it would actually be like a challenge where I would swallow it in, and it wouldn't fully go down always. And there would be these voices in my head, but what if they only knew this or that thing or the other thing?
Mm.
And then slowly, as I focused on it, it grew because what we focus on grows. And it did. And it kept growing and it kept growing and kept growing. And now I believe that people are picking up the energy that I'm putting down and they know that they sense inside of their being that I take the time to receive them.
Mm.
And now I have thousands, thousands and thousands of messages inside of that folder in my phone. Thousands. I can't even
Oh,
go through it. And if you come to my house, you see that my fridge is covered in
yes.
notes and beautiful things. And it, it's the possibility of the art of receiving. It's an art. And you know what? To become sometimes artists are born like that. And I believe we are. I believe we're all born
Mhm.
with the art of receiving the abundance inside of this universe. And sometimes for whatever nurture reasons, the artist aspect of us goes to sleep and we need to wake it up. We need to nurture it. We need to nurture the art of the receiving inside of ourselves. And sometimes that means taking some work. Sometimes that means taking a moment. And there's this language that some of my friends use with each other. I'm going to thank you so much, and I have a friend who says often, I'm going to take a moment to really receive that, or I'm really receiving that, or closing their eyes and taking a breath and taking it in, or I receive you. What a beautiful thing. Because how many of you and how many of us hold back on saying beautiful things to others because we don't know if it's too much or if we'll be received. Hold
Mm.
back on giving gifts, hold back on giving reflections, hold back on giving care, hold back on giving love, hold back on should I drive down there and be there for them? But what if they won't want it?
Yeah.
As opposed to really, really showing up in a way that we can give with a full heart. And the way that I think, our giving and receiving mechanisms is really our receiving mechanisms because it's receiving, receiving, whether that means taking in or being received,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm so excited and passionate about this topic because in some ways in my own life, it feels like I've discovered a passageway into abundance
Yeah.
and speaking about it and living in it and being grateful for it. And this isn't about outside things. It does manifest in ways in outside things that are so beautiful and fun and big, but it's so much more about the inside. It's so much what
Yeah.
matters the most is how we feel on the inside.
I mean, wow. And I am witness to all of this in your real life. And it's really just such a beautiful thing to witness and such a beautiful thing to know that it exists. And I know for myself, it's definitely an aspiration. And I have such
Yeah.
a beautiful guide in witnessing you in the way that you've opened space for that in your life.
Mm,
And I think that there's something really important that you're bringing out, which is taking it, whatever the offering, words, gesture is at face value. I
yeah.
think that in the way that I've experienced it with my very elegant defenses, that I'll be offered something, but then I will decide for the other person how that's actually an inconvenience for them. So
Totally.
yeah, so then I'm gonna already manipulate the situation to decide that it's more of a. So you're asking me, hey, I'm gonna be going to the school anyways. Do you want me to pick up your son? And I'm like, no, 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 don't bother because I know it's gonna be so hard for her. She's gonna drive it away. Da, 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 da. So I'm gonna be like, no, no, it's okay, it's fine because of my inability to receive in that moment. So I'm gonna, but then I'm rushing through traffic and trying to get there, and I could have just taken it at face value. And if that person didn't really mean what she said, it's actually not my business to manage
Yeah.
that for the other person. I can
Yeah.
choose to receive it or I can choose not to receive it because of whatever reason. but my assumptions on someone else's behalf to protect what it is, my behavior of not being able to do what it is taking on somebody else's stuff. It's like
Totally.
what you're offering is this very clear, it's beautiful. And I just feel like this opening in my chest. Like, it's such an open way to receive. And the way you were saying, to swallow something in, to really allow whatever that is at face value to be for you. And I
Yeah.
also resonate deeply with those and because I speak for myself, where there might have been times in your life that things were promised or that things were meant to come through and they didn't. And so you
Right.
started to lose faith in receiving because there wasn't what was being held, because what was taken at face value actually you didn't get it. And so now
Yeah.
you question the things that are coming to you at face value. But I think what you're offering is this beautiful way to open space for that and to let people hold their own. It's not your
Yeah.
fault that the person said that they were going to come and they didn't show up. It's not, it has nothing to
Yeah.
do with
Yeah.
you. They,
Yeah.
it's that's on them, you know? So yeah, so
There's
compassion for that, and just also just I really appreciate seeing it for what it is. Take it for what it is, exactly as it is.
beautiful, beautiful. And to add to even more of the compassion, there is just to acknowledge for those listening, why don't we
Hmm.
want to always receive at face value? And one of the reasons is what Chani mentioned, because we're protecting ourselves from disappointment of
Yeah.
not getting it met in the way that we need or the way that we want, which is might have been a childhood experience, but also because we might have experienced conditionality in receiving. I'll give you this if you behave. Or that's a very prime example of bribing in children, right? If you go to school, I'll take you to Florida for midwinter break or
Hmm.
etc. So then there's some kind of conditionality. So what are we programmed then into believing? Ooh, there must be some kind of catch here.
Yeah.
There must
Yeah.
be some kind of fine print that I'm not reading, that I'm not seeing in the manual. And
Or
that
like a
gives,
husband that's being held that is not really being spoken, but somehow being calculated
yeah,
some kind
yeah,
of way. Husband is like an account, some kind
yeah.
of way.
And I'm thinking about this meditation that source code, which is a specific kind of quantum healing modality that has a lot of wisdom inside of it, talks about this coping style that we develop as children called the premature coping style. And
Hmm.
it's when a child needs to grow up too quickly because the first kind of parent that I spoke about, that the parent has, it's almost like the child needs to be their parent's parent or believes
Yeah.
that they need to in some way because their parent shows more childlike behaviors or ways of being in the world. So the child is programmed in a young age to feel like they need to be some kind of savior. And because of that, what happens? The child living their whole life with I invite anyone here who's listening to close their eyes and just imagine arrows or all the vectors pointed outward, sending energy to everyone else, really looking at everyone else, sending nourishment to everybody else, sending love to everybody else, sending chicken soup to everybody else, making food for everybody else. But coming in, there's not much. And that's when a lot of eating disorders also fall
Hmm.
under this specific, because it's like I can cook when I have guests, but am I really feeding myself 3 meals a day? I have someone who's close to me who doesn't drink during the day because they don't want to have to take the time to bother to go to the bathroom. That's the when I got under for them, it was I don't want to need to go to pee because that means that I might have to pull over the car and have a need. Right? So
Mm.
that's an extreme example that
Yes.
I believe many people here listening might resonate with.
Yes. Yes.
And so what happens? How do we heal this coping style inside of ourselves? Whether you know where it comes from or not is doesn't matter as much because the stories
Yeah.
matter much less than the manifestation of the pattern inside of us. How do we by sending those arrows of love and of nurturing and of nourishment and of chicken soup back into ourselves? And
Mm.
really inviting everyone listening to close their eyes and imagine sending out all those arrows to everybody who you love in your life. Just send them all out. Just imagine they're coming from all the sides of you and you're just sending it out to everybody who you love. And take a breath and really just allow your heart to explode with all the love and nurturance and nourishment and giving that you have done and that you have to people you love. And then send it to people you don't even know. And then send it to people that are struggling. You know, right now there's a lot going on in California and in the Middle East, really sending your love and nurturance and desire and yearning for their wholeness and their nourishment. And then just take a breath and imagine it penetrating them. Imagine it getting to them. Imagine it filling them. And then without canceling that, but in addition to, imagine all those arrows turning back and coming right back into you. That overwhelming amount of receiving. And just swallow. And take in as much or as little as is possible for you. Because if you've been fasting for a long time, you might not want to eat so much right away. It might feel really overwhelming or nauseating. Just let it slowly and ask the God of your understanding or your own higher self, allow me to receive nourishment and resourcing in a sustainable way in which I can open more and more and more to all the love that's available in my own heart for myself. Because a nourished world is a safe world. A nourished world is a resourced world. So beautiful. Yeah. And whenever you're ready, just open your eyes. I did not expect to drop us into a meditation, but here we are.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made me think of a reflection that I received this week in my book club. And
Mm,
one of the participants was telling me that she wasn't feeling well.
mm,
And so her friend called her and was like, "Hey, how's it going? Can I make you some soup? I'd love to bring some soup over to you."
mm,
Mind you, this person that is sick, if anybody else would be sick, in a heartbeat, she would be at your door with soup because that's her nature. She's a giver and she would be at your door. And her friend was offering her this, and she was like, "No, it's okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm having tea. I'll be okay." And she said this beautiful statement. She was like, "You know what? It's probably good for you to receive in moments when you don't really need it that much. So when the moment comes when you do, you'll be easier on yourself to allow it." I
mm.
just thought that was so powerful. Everything in this world, anything that we're building is a practice, right? Even faith,
Yeah.
everything is a practice. We build. You slowly took pictures of one screenshot that build and build and build, right? And became thousands now. And so this idea of before we're in this dire need of like, oh my gosh, now I need to be saved, or now it's so intense, I have no choice. Can I offer myself ways to allow myself to receive when it's easier and softer so I can get in the motions and in the practice of allowing it to myself,
Wow.
allowing myself to
Well,
bring that in? And I just thought that was really, really powerful because I think that sometimes when we are, and I'm speaking of myself, when I have pushed away receiving so often, when it came to that moment that I really did need it and I didn't really have a choice, it was even more uncomfortable and defended. Even more, I had to like, oh, it's so hard for me to take this, but I don't have a choice and I can't do it without you. So fine, fine, fine. Like this, like, and this beautiful, I mean, this friend of hers was obviously so soft and cared so much for her friend. And I thought that that's such a beautiful invitation. How can we build practices into our lives that could motivate and perpetuate the possibility and the art, right? And art is a craft. The more we do it, the better we get at that, the more refined, the more beautiful the expression looks. And so This idea of understanding that this is an art that we're building, that
Mm.
yes, for some of us it might come really naturally, and for many of us it doesn't. And it's baby steps, one step in front of the other. And I remember when I read that book, I implemented a practice into my life because I
Mm.
was like, no, I'm not ready to just receive everything. Slow roll, slow roll. I got to get there. But I was like, where in my life can I open up space for this so that I can create a practice where this is something that I'm building?
Yeah.
And what I chose to do is that generally on Shabbos, I make all the food for Shabbos, and I would also set my table beautifully to make Shabbos ready.
Shabbos is
Shabbos
the
is
day of rest.
the day of rest ritual that happens every Friday night from sundown until Saturday sundown. A beautiful time of togetherness and intention and delicious food and guests and all the fun things. And
Yeah.
so what I used to do was set my table, but I decided, you know what? I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna put the tablecloth on the table so we know that it's Shabbos here. It's always Shabbos is also about an elevated, even physical experience. And so my table
Yeah.
that's usually just a raw wood table gets a beautiful tablecloth to elevate the experience. But I'm not gonna set the table anymore.
Yes.
This way, I can open up space to receive. So when people can come to my home, and when they come to my home as my guests or as my family or as my siblings, whoever it is that's arriving, when they say, "Hey, Khan, can I help you with anything? Is there anything I can do?" I can actually give them something to do so that I could create that bond and that the bid for connection is received. And so now, never mind what the interaction is, but more about being able to receive that and give them the possibility to offer me, to like
Yes.
offer that. Because before then, when people would come, everything was set and all good, and they would ask me, "Can I help you?" Then, no, everything's good. Just relax, just
Because you
enjoy.
get everything done because you are efficient and you are quick and it is easier for you to do it yourself and you're opening up a space where it isn't only you're doing it for yourself to be able to receive connection, not necessarily even because you need them to set the table.
Absolutely not. But
Yeah.
it's recognizing that receiving is the bid for connection, is how can I open up spaces in my life to cultivate that? And I
Yeah.
want to offer that to our audience
Yeah.
because remembering that this is a practice and it takes practice, right?
Yeah.
What were you saying before? By in order to taste all the flavors in life, we need to taste all the flavors of life. So, in
Yeah.
order to have the things that we desire, we need to start creating moments where we're cultivating that so that we can practice it and bring it more deeply into our lives. And like that girl, she said, take it when you don't need it as much so that when the moments come, you
Yeah.
are ready to receive it. So, it's for me, that was a gesture. No, of course, I don't need your ultimately, do I need your help with it? I could have done it before you came, but that's not the point. The point is when I recognize that this is the opening for the bid for connection, I realize, what do I desire the most ultimately?
Mm.
I desire connection. That
Yeah.
is what I want. And I didn't realize that by not receiving, I was actually pushing the thing that I wanted the most away from myself, not
Yes.
creating that by deciding and what's convenient for you and all of the assumptions and all the blah, 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 all that story. But it's when I recognized what the undercurrent, what's under the table here, what can I do to create that? And that led to many other things in my life. But it starts with one thing. One
Yeah.
thing leads to another. And
Yeah.
so I want to offer our audience, if there's a way that you can open up space to create the possibility to receive, because
Yeah.
ultimately what it means is it doesn't make you less capable. It doesn't make you less at anything. It just is opening the possibility to connect, to have the
Yeah.
connections, to have the intimacy in your life, and to find the ways, the little ways in your own way, in your own
Yeah.
life that you can introduce this practice, because practice makes better, and better gives us a life that is more deeply connected and more intimate and more in alignment with the desire of what's really inside of us, the depth of what we are really, really wanting in this lifetime.
Yeah. Thank you for that offering. And how do we bring that into our relationship with God or the universe? With desire, because
Mm.
similar to opening up space for others to give to us, how do we open up space for the universe? By desiring possibilities for ourselves, by allowing us to tap in, even if we might be disappointed, or even if we might be afraid or feel unworthy to dream big, or are programmed with other ways of desiring to live in a
Mm,
loving, nourishing, abundant universe for us and everyone around us. I think that when we don't have to negate the part of us that gives, the part of us that has the arrows, pointed outward. It's just that we also get to have arrows coming in. So when I can desire not only for others, but for myself, and not
yeah.
only for myself, but for others, then I have that sweet spot, which then the universe responds to in kind, because for the good of me is because when I truly believe that for the good of me is for the good of all, and the good of all is the good of me, then so many other degrees of separation melt away, and the
Mm,
possibilities of the universe become so much more expansive. And I also wanted to offer that if you are a person who wants to give, and you have people in your life right now who have difficulty receiving, like I had, like Chani had, like so many people listening had, one gift you can give to them and to yourself most of all is not to take it personally.
right.
Because after listening to this podcast, you can understand where it comes from, and you can maybe help them learn to also step into the frequency of the possibility of the art of receiving with more grace. Because when you take it personally, it really, it's okay. And it makes sense if you have, or if you do, or if you did, or if you'll do it again. But
Yes.
just know that that's an offering that you can give to yourself. I wanted to share that as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wrap for today.
I
What a,
think it's a wrap. I think we're pretty much complete.
yeah.
Ooh, I just thought of one more thing I wanted to say.
Okay.
This is really interesting. And then we're going to end
Okay.
off for today.
Yes.
Friends and family.
Friends and
Um,
family.
friends and family.
Hmm.
What I'm going to say is that I have some clients who are really, really honest with themselves, and they've learned that often they get sick because subconsciously the only time that they received as a child nourishment and care was when they got sick. So their body has learned that when they're undernourished and under-resourced, certain sickness comes about, because that's the only time that they feel legitimate or worthy or okay to receive support, because that's the way that they've been programmed. So my offering to you all is receive from yourself. Take care of yourself, nourish yourself before your body needs to ask for it from you, by feeding it love and care and food and sleep and water and bathroom breaks and all the kinds of things that you can allow for yourself to do, so that you can live in a healthy body, in a healthy state of being, a vital state of being.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here with us. This was great. And until next time.
I love doing this with you, Fanny. So fun.
We are so humbled and delighted to have you with us. Our podcast is Real Life in Real Time, where we embark on curious conversations that expand our awareness and capacity for all that is possible.
The Possibility of the Universe podcast is only possible because of you, our audience. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for listening. I'm Connie. First and foremost, I am a believer. I am a wife. I am a mother of 6 beautiful children. I am the co-owner of Mimulo, luxury florist and event production company. I am a life coach working with both individuals and couples to empower them to step into their own possibilities in this universe.
Hi, I'm Rivky, and I love life. I love heart-centered living. I love to be curious, and I love to connect with all things. I started off as a social worker and developmental therapist, and now I work as a somatic and subconscious practitioner using modalities such as somatic healing, breathwork, bodywork, hypnotherapy, and some really magical and incredible quantum healing technologies. I work with individuals, couples, run retreats and courses using these modalities to help people find the most freedom, presence, aliveness, and embodiment inside of their lives. The ways to contact us are through my website, rivkygross.com. That is spelled RIVKY dash, the straight line dash, gross, GROSS.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Chani at Muckhome Sanctuary, and myself at Rivky Gross. We are here for any and all questions and feedback through the contact form on the website, and we're so looking forward to hearing from you.